Hello, BookTube, and welcome to Autumn Amore at last. After a false alarm on my part, we have finally reached a new BookTube event created by the Bookish Bryants, who have a bit of a talent for creating new BookTube events. And they have created, I don't know if you've seen, but they've done a string of genre-related BookTube events. For a whole bunch of genres, some of which I love, some of which I don't do much for me, and their latest one is Autumn Amore, which is all about romance. And they've assembled a great group of co-hosts. I'm hoping that we will have some live discussions. I'm hoping that we will have some recorded Zoom, StreamYard discussions with a whole bunch of us talking about romances. That would be a lot of fun. I'm entirely up for that, but once again, as with Garb August and a bunch of other BookTube events, a lot of the people involved other than me have lots of responsibilities. they don't just sit on their fainting couch all day long reading and writing. They have to go places and do things. So I'm hoping that we get at least a few discussions, but in the meantime, you'll be getting some videos from me. And I want to stress here what I stress in all the BookTube events that I'm a part of. We have prompts and structures for Autumn Amore, but you don't have to follow them. If you read a romance novel in September, then you have more than fulfilled your obligations for Autumn Amore. We're mainly just deciding to celebrate this particular genre. But we do have prompts if you want to follow them. And the first week of Autumn Amore is historical or contemporary. Because as Sarah at the Bookish Knitter and as I have been saying forever and ever, romance is an umbrella that covers everything. And so a great amount of romance, a huge percentage of it is set in the past. It's historical fiction. But then there's a large amount of it that's set in the present as well. And in this first week, you can pick one or two. You can read one example of each. You can read a corresponding example of each. There are some romance novels, many of them, we can call it the Outlander school, that blend the two, where they will have the romance story in the past directly connected with a romance story in the present. Or you could pick a historical romance set in London and a modern day romance set in London. I mean, 80 million variations on a theme. And you don't have to follow the theme. I won't, I don't think, always be following a weekly theme. I intend to read a huge amount of romance in the month of September. I read a lot of romance anyway. It's a steady part of my reading diet. But I'm happy to increase that amount for the sake of Autumn Amore. And I have two books to talk about today. Two books that I read to start off the month. And because the event is new in my mind and because the prompts are new in my mind, I followed them. I read one historical and one contemporary. Although the contemporary isn't that contemporary anymore. I think it's 20 years in the past. Well, 2017. So 5 years in the past. And the historical isn't that historical. There's no actual date given on it. And there's a lot of historical anachronisms. I think it's meant to be more of a fantasy on history than the kind of scrupulous factual basis that a lot of historical fiction has. The historical one was this. It's brand new. It's by Michelle McLean, and it's called The Gunslinger's Guide to Avoiding Matrimony. Oh, I don't want to block my own romance. Oh, hi, baby. This I don't think that I've ever read this author before, but it's set in ye old West times. People ride horses. They have buggies and carriages and whatnot. There are anachronisms, but it's mostly then. No date is given, but I would put this probably around the end of the 19th century. And it starts off, our main character is called Adam Brady. And when we meet him as the novel starts, he is riding his horse out in the wilderness, trying to stay ahead of a relentless lawman who wants to arrest him at the very least, probably see him hanged. And at one point, Adam gets off his horse to look around and trips and falls face first into a hole. He face plants on the ground. And when he lifts his face up, he sees a sign buried in a sort of a pathway buried in brambles. No one's used it in a long time. It's a Deus Ex Machina moment to kick off the book. There are plenty of them in this thing. He follows the path. He and his horse follow the path and come to a town that is not easy to get to. I presume that it has farmland. I presume that it has access to a river, but it is deep in the middle of nowhere with no visitors. And it turns out that's just how people want it in the town of Desolation. The town of Desolation is a place for second chances. It's full of ex-gunfighters, people on the run from the law, ex-cheaters, ex-card sharps, who have decided to build a community together with no judgment and no real questioning, and with plenty of rules. Adam gets to town, goes to the nearest bar to seek out information about Desolation, and learns that that there are rules, and that he needs to go to the sheriff's office to learn those rules. Newcomers are told, welcome to town, but you don't get to choose anything you want here. We like knowing what people are doing, and they very much like their secluded status. That suits Adam, because he thinks if this town is hard to find and intentionally secretive, maybe the lawman that's on his trail won't find him. So he settles in and almost immediately meets the young woman in the story, whose name is Nora. And he meets her because she is trying to haul her dead, drunk father onto a wagon. Just totally insensitive. He's not staggering or burbling. He's just completely inert. He's an unconscious body. And Adam doesn't so much offer to help her. She's as big as he is. She's as tall as he is. She's a strong young woman, and maybe might be able to handle it on her own, but she clearly wants his help, and they start squabbling right there in the street, where they start pecking at each other, bantering at each other in the sharp way of the progenitor, I would argue, of all romance novels, which is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, where there's a barbed kind of banter right away from people who, because of the barbs of that banter, are destined to end up with each other. That banter is very funny. I think, this is actually called a romantic comedy. And unlike other books that have sort of built themselves that way, this is actually funny from start to finish. Even when things are really dark at the end of the book. Obviously, with the setup that I told you, that lawmaker is going to find Adam eventually, and it's going to look like there's no hope. Even then, this author goes out of her way for absurdist moments, funny bits and pieces, good bits of toss-away dialogue, genuinely smilingly funny throughout. And these two, Adam and Nora, are arguing in the street. They're gathering attention because people are finding it adorable. They're just slashing back and forth at each other while her father just lays there. And while they're arguing in the street, a little boy runs up to them with a document and a pen. And he's sort of weaving around them, trying to say, "Sign here, please sign here." And they toss him away. They discard him, and they discard the document. And he actually says, "Oh, I got to get another one. This one's all ruined. I need to get another blank form." We don't know what he's doing. He comes back again, and in their distraction, they sign the document just to get him out of their hair. And it turns out that they've signed a marriage contract because there's no squabbling between men and women in Desolation. If you're squabbling the way these two are, probably you should be married. And neither one of them likes it or wants it to be true, so we get a classic romance bumpy marriage. The two of them are sarcastic to each other almost to the very last page of the book. But, again, predictably for romance novels, they are getting more and more attracted to each other that whole time. I thought it was absolutely delightful. Just loved it. Now, I don't know. Let's take a look. Let's find out what we can tell from this. This is out from Entangled, the Entangled imprint of Avon, I think. Is that right? Amara Books. Wow. Okay, yeah, Entangled Publishing. This author, Michelle McLean, has written a huge amount of books. But the previous one, this is the Gunslinger series. Does that actually say that on the cover? No, it doesn't. This is the Gunslinger series. And the list of the author's previous work says that this is the second book, and the first one is Hitched to the Gunslinger, which I don't think I've read. I think I would remember this author's writing style. But as an inaugural reading event for Autumn Amour, I really liked it. That was my historical one. Like I said, there are anachronisms. I don't think that Michelle McLean went out of her way to research every last bit and piece of the Old West, no matter when she was setting it. There are some things in here that wouldn't happen anywhere in the Old West, that they would happen in 2022 movie set in the Old West. But I ended up not mattering. This is clearly a Fantasia of sorts, and I loved it for that. I just loved it for that. I had a smile on my face the whole time. And then the contemporary book that I read is from 5 years ago, and it is by Jill Shalvis, who has a great number of fans on and off BookTube. And I have to confess, everything of hers that I have read, I have really liked. This is a Heartbreaker Bay novel. It's called that, and that is often a gambit in romance novels where there's a location that is sort of central to the magic of the series. It's not just accidental that that a thing is set in a small village in Colorado or on a northern California bay inlet or whatever. That sort of pulls all of the stories together. The authors will often do that in romance. They will have a particularly charismatic setting, and then the idea of the series, if it catches on, will be that you will learn the romantic stories of virtually everybody in that setting. The Heartbreaker Bay novels are really self-contained. Jill Shalvis does a really self-conscious job of containing them so that you don't need to read any other Heartbreaker Bay novels to like the one you're reading. And the one I read is Accidentally on Purpose, with a really pretty cover artwork here. See, this is just a photo with a blurry backdrop. But this has at least a bit of an attempt at artwork on the back there with a fountain and a bench. It's contemporary because the man has a skin-tight T-shirt and the woman is not wearing any clothes on the cover, so you know that it's contemporary. And this is the story of the main character's name is Ellie. Who's the man? Archer. That's right, Archer. He is a big, muscular, rough and tumble security guy who had a previous relationship with Ellie in Heartbreaker Bay. That he thought was really rough on her. It just struck him that he wasn't the right man for her, and he didn't want to put her through it anymore. So they ended what little relationship they had, even though he's in love with her and she's very much in love with him. They are obviously the one for each other. But he refuses to admit it and says, no, I don't want you to get hurt. I won't put you through that, taking a high, noble stance. So she says, well, I'll be hanged if I'll let him know that he's the only man I want. So I'll date all sorts of other men. But he can only go so far. He only goes so far in that attitude. He still can't stand the idea of her dating other men. So he intentionally sabotages every date that she has, every relationship that might develop. He's too noble to put her through the rigors of dating him, of being his girlfriend or his wife. But he doesn't want anybody else either. And of course, how a gimmick like that is going to go. Eventually, it's going to backfire on both of them, and they are going to end up together. And Jill Shalvis, like most romance authors, is not interested in subverting expectations. She's not interested in thwarting your expectations about a novel. Most of the most successful romance novelists know perfectly well that the gist of what the book is going to end up being. It's the purpose. The purpose of the book is the pleasure of getting there. And Jill Shalvis is a wonderfully pleasurable writer. She's immensely enjoyable to read. So my contemporary first book for Autumn Amour and my historical first book for Autumn Amour were both wins. They were both in the plus column. Very, very happy about that. So I'm going to keep going for the first week of Autumn Amour. There's still that duality between present day, something set in the present day, and something historical. I had made no secret on this channel. I love historical Regency romances. I love historical romances just in general. Old West, Viking era, but mainly the Regency. Because I know that about myself, and because this event is, partly to explore, I'm going to try not to read any Regency romances for Autumn Amour. I'm going to try not to do that. There's plenty of other historical fish in the sea, so whatever pairing I do next, I'm hoping that the historical is not a Regency, unless one of them just sweeps me away. But anyway, that's the beginning to Autumn Amour. If I remember, I will leave links. The Bookish Bryants did an announcement video for Autumn Amour, and there might be other videos. And I will get to work I will agitate behind the scenes, see if I can join in on one of those live discussions or get one to happen. That would be wonderful. But anyway, that's it for today. I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.